Hey, Thomas.
Dude,
How you doing?
I'm doing, man. What's going on out there in the supernatural realms, man?
I don't know, man. I just keep shaking my head every time I look at this news.
Hey, are we on the air?
Yeah, we are.
I better change my shirt.
Was it dirty or something? You want people to see it?
I wanted to put on the pretty blue one so everybody could see me.
Oh, yeah?
I'm sorry. No, I'm not.
So what's your take on all this crap, man? I saw that you posted something on Facebook about it.
Oh, well, I have to apologize to the listeners. I haven't been listening. I just got a invitation to call in if I was online, so here I am. I'm not even in the chat room. I don't even know what's going on with that. So what are we talking about, Tim?
Well, last week I had we had talked about the nature of humanity, and that was inspired by what had happened in Charleston and the events and the mentality of the individual, the hatred that he had, and we had talked about people changing from the internal to the external, and mankind needs to really take a look at himself at his core to see what's really going on inside each and every one of us as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we had talked about last week, and I played that from like 6 to 8. Then I was going to maybe talk about that, maybe take some calls and what people had thought about those events and what's going on now with the monuments being removed and taken elsewhere, and the whole flag thing and what it means.
Oh yeah, I did write something on that Confederate flag controversy.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know they were moving monuments also. I had no idea they were doing that.
Yeah, that says Memphis mayor is digging up the Confederate general and his wife. They were going to move the monument elsewhere.
Oh, all right. I see. Well, if you read my post, which I'm sure you did, my position is that, of course, I'm very concerned about all this political correctness that's been building for years, and it really has just gone out of control. And I think that, people are being programmed through fear. Mm-hmm. And it really is a very disturbing thing, because all you have to do is use a bit of your imagination and play it through to how this is going to lead to a particular kind of future. And that gets very scary after a while when you start thinking about that. And of course, I'm old enough to be, to remember the days before all this crazy stuff started. For example, all the jokes I heard when I was a young man, you can't tell them anymore.
Right.
Because someone's feelings will be hurt. And, I appreciate that to a point, but to a point. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it becomes, it becomes frightening. It really becomes a society based upon fear.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the perpetrator had that in mind? Do you think he wanted to stir this issue up?
What, this young guy that went and shot those people up in that church?
Yeah.
Oh, my. I don't know. Perhaps he had some sort of vision of grandeur, that type of thing. I don't think they fully have evaluated him mentally. That's kind of a symptom of what they call schizophrenia, whatever that is. But I think, based on what they're saying, that he really thought that he was going to be making some sort of an impression. I think he thought he was going to start a civil war again or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I haven't been paying too much attention to the minutia of it. It's just obviously the kid lost it. He went nuts. And there's all different kinds of nuts out there. And it's hard to get into the minds of these individuals anyway. For me, of course, I kind of look at it that they really got a hold of something bad in terms of something spiritual inside of them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think drives all this. I think it's a spiritual issue in nature. He obviously had some sort of a hate for black people. But I think people like this, generally what occurs in my mind is that they have issues. They have problems in their lives or just living their lives, negotiating their life from day to day, mostly socially. These are economic or emotional issues, and they've never been able to resolve them. They don't know how to make their lives work. And so what happens is that they have to blame an external source. And I see this very commonly. It's like in the in the conspiracy theory genre. This is this underlying theme among many of the rank and file in that particular community, if you could call it that. I think it's a bit looser than that, but where they feel that they have to blame certain woes on a government conspiracy, or some kind of a conspiracy that like that. So that, number one, they cannot help the state that they're in. It's somebody else's fault. Mm-hmm. The other guy is screwing their lives up. And it gets real serious when they start thinking that, the government is spying on them, and that does get into that dementia and the schizophrenia and all that. And so it does two things. Number one, it absolves them of any responsibility to fix their own lives because it's somebody else's fault. Mm-hmm. And then they become a victim. And, of course, when you're a victim, you can't help yourself.
Right.
You're being victimized by somebody. And that's where people get into this kind of a mindset. And I think that a fellow like this, he obviously had a lot of hatred in him, a lot of anger, and he found some sort of a outlet for that anger where he felt that he was being victimized and that, he was going to try to make a change in that direction by attacking black people. Mm-hmm. The Confederate flag thing just happened to be a convenient symbol,
Right. I also read where this person just recently broke up with his girlfriend, and she started dating an African American man, and they were saying maybe that was the final blow to what had happened, to what he did. I don't know. But they had mentioned something about that.
Well, yeah, and clearly the kid didn't have the coping skills to deal with it. So there's things that if you wanted to dig up into his past, you can kind of find certain things that are going to indicate, well, how did this kid get to where he was? But in the end, he obviously didn't have all that much value on human life for whatever reason. Mm.
My parents have a neighbor that she seems, confused and thinking that, all this stuff happens to her. Why all this stuff happens to her? God's against her. This person.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be more and more common nowadays.
Well, there's two kinds of people in the world. There are effective people, and there are affected people.
Right.
And the affected people will always ask the question, what will happen to me in this situation? Effective people ask a different question. They ask themselves, what will I do about this situation? And so that's the difference between being effective and affected. And you're either one or the other, primarily. As far as the Confederate flag, the battle flag, you know what I wrote. I felt that it was a issue of whether governments have the same right of free speech as private citizens and private entities do. And I argued that governmental bodies and governmental institutions have constitutions in this country that specifically and distinctly define their duties and responsibilities. And governmental bodies, believe it or not, governmental entities are not granted the right of free speech, freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Individuals are granted that right. So while individuals can collectively make statements of opinion, speech, expression, a government really doesn't have that kind of, of power, of authority, of rights allocated to it by its constitutions, their respective constitutions. And so I don't see it as, in other words, what I see is that the situation should be handled not over a debate on what these symbols mean, because that can go on forever and bleed into all kinds of places.
Right.
Which is what it's doing. It's turning insane. Or I should say highly unreasonable. And again, I should mention that we have to understand that symbols are a form of communication. They are in language. So when you see a symbol, it conveys a certain concept. A certain idea. And a same symbol could mean different things to different people.
Right.
I think in the Confederate flag, for example, one of the symbols that it conveys to almost everybody sees it is one of division. It's a divisive symbol. It's not one of unity like the United States flag is, but it's divisive. And I argue, of course, that it's a symbol of a country that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
We fought that war many, many years ago, over 100 years ago, and that what it represented is dissolved. It's gone. So in the end, what I said is this: governments do not have a right of free speech and freedom of expression. And since we're talking about this battle flag, we're talking about a symbol that has no autonomy and authority, legal authority anymore. So you have the United States flag and a state flag flying underneath of it, which are fitting and proper. They make a statement, too, that has to do with the authority, the legality, the jurisdiction, and the autonomy of that body of government over which that flag is flying. And the land on which that government operates is specifically intended for the discharging and the conducting of those duties of those governmental bodies, specifically specified and delineated in their respective constitutions. But the Confederate battle flag, just by itself, is a statement.
Mm-hmm.
It is an expression of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which is not allocated to governmental bodies. Therefore, what I would say, as I mentioned in the article, if I was a judge and I was going to be judging a suit that came in front of me that had to do with that, what I would judge is this. If you had a state flag that had the Confederate symbol, or the Southern Cross as it's sometimes called, built in to that flag, well, that's a states' right issue. Mm-hmm. That has to do with the state. If the state, the citizens of the state, their elected representatives collectively felt that they wanted that symbol in the state, well, then it's legal because it is the flag of their state.
Right.
And it has every right to fly on that government land. But the Confederate battle flag doesn't represent anything like that. It's just a statement. Mm-hmm. And since a government does not have freedom of speech as the individuals and private entities do, it has no place on government land.
Which makes me wonder why it was put out in public display in the first place.
Well, if you read back on it, these Confederate symbols began to be incorporated by these southern states during the period of the late 50s and the 60s when the civil rights movement was taking shape.
Okay.
You know, I think it was, oh gosh, and if I'm wrong, everybody can beat me up. Brown versus Board of Education. Supreme Court ruling, 1954, that declared as law of the land that separate was not equal. Mm-hmm. So that if you had separate bathrooms for whites and coloreds, for example, which is what they called it at the time, the law before said that as long as they were equivalent bathrooms, if they were equal in every other way, then that was legal. And the 1954 Supreme Court ruling said that no. If they're separate, they can't be equal. And so that's when things began to take shape, and some of these southern states were rebelling against it and putting up these Confederate symbols. The one in Carolina, which is this Confederate battle flag, was put up there in the 60s. And it was specifically put up there to thumb its nose at the federal government, who was trying to install this civil rights at the time. Now, when I lived in the North at the time, and we never really looked at the Confederate flag as a symbol of racism.
Right.
Even though there's a lot of evidence to show it was. If you take a look at the state, the Confederate states, the individual states, declarations of secession, when they seceded from the United States during prior to the Civil War, many of them actually spell out the issue of slavery and white supremacy as the reasons for doing so. So it definitely is a racially charged symbol. But like I said, this is a statement being made. It's a divisive statement, and it was a statement that was made by a governmental body on government grounds.
Okay.
And so my solution is to look back and realize, well, government bodies do not have the right of free speech. They are not individuals. They are not granted any kind of right like that by their constitutions. They are assigned and constrained by a specific definition of duties and responsibilities. Freedom of speech is not one of them. It's like I mentioned in the article I wrote, somebody who's shuffling hamburgers on a grill at a McDonald's is not expressing freedom of speech. They're performing a job. And in the performance of that duty, if they were to say to every patron they saw, go to Burger King, instead of eating here at McDonald's, that's not part of their duties. And they could be discharged for that justifiably. So governments do not have the right of freedom of speech, in my opinion, as part of their duties and definitions and responsibilities, and therefore such statements of free speech are reserved for the private sector, for individuals. So if you want to put a Confederate flag on the side of your truck and drive around town or fly it on your house, that's fine. That should be protected, but a government has no right to make those kind of freedom of speech and expression statements.
Right. I had also read where there was a store, Gettysburg, that was going to take all of their Confederate flag merchandise off the shelves, and they weren't going to sell it.
That's really stupid.
Yeah, it is.
That's what this fear-mongering is doing, that everybody is afraid, and they're afraid. What it is, it all has to do with money. Because this is why you pick up packages in the store and they are printed in 2 different languages. Right. Or you call some organization or some store and then you'll hear it in English and you'll hear it in Spanish. Are they doing this for equal rights? No. They're doing it because they realize in their demographics that a certain percentage, there's a significant enough percentage of their patrons who are of that inclination or of that nationality and speak that language, that they need to provide for it. And so it's good for their bottom line. Quite honestly, they wouldn't care as long as you're going into the Walmart and laying a $20 bill on the counter for whatever it is. They don't care whether you're white, black, 3 heads, got hands out of your butt, come from Mars. They could care less.
Yeah.
So everybody's afraid, like the fellow who made the goofy comment. I don't know. It was that Duck Commander show, whatever it is. I don't watch much of that kind of stuff. Where the old guy made a comment and everybody got freaked out, and the advertisers were freaked out because they were afraid to have that negativity associated with their brand. Personally, they could give a damn. As long as they're still selling the same amount of cornflakes every week, they could care less. But because the people react to it, that's what scares them.
Right.
So that they would be removing Confederate items from a store, that sells souvenirs on a Gettysburg battlefield is absolutely asinine, but they're afraid. They don't want to offend anyone because they're afraid they'll lose business.
Right.
They're afraid they'll have a finger pointed at them. You're the boogeyman. And people better wake up and figure out this is the same shit, excuse my French, that began to happen with the Social Nationalist Party in Germany. This started giving rise, it started in the days of the brown shirts.
Yep.
This is what happened in communist Russia. So this is scary, guys. This is not America. Freedom of speech, people are going to get their feelings hurt. But we think that the freedom of speech and expression is more important than people's feelings getting hurt, because the alternative is having, even if it's a majority, that this majority will band together and persecute the minority because they don't have a majority opinion. And that's what this country was set up to protect against. Now we're on a civics lesson. You got me going now, Tim. I hear people all over the place. I've been hearing for years, our democracy. No. Wrong. Dumb. You've been misled. You've been brainwashed. You've been mentally scuttled. I've even heard our current president and his liberal Supreme Court judge that he put on there call this a democracy. It is not. Remember your Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. People even say that anymore.
I don't know.
And to the republic for which it stands. Remember the Civil War song, the Battle Hymn of the Republic?
Yep.
It didn't say the Battle Hymn of the Democracy. We're not a democracy. A democracy, the majority rules. Our founding fathers didn't want that. Mm-hmm. They wanted a representative republic.
They would roll over in their graves if they knew what was going on today.
They'd line us all up and shoot us as traitors.
Yep.
My goodness. You still don't. People walk around thinking, I have a right to vote for president. No, you don't. You don't have any right to vote for president.
If your vote even counts.
Yeah. In fact, we didn't get any kind of a right, so to speak, to vote for senators until near the end of the 19th century. Mm-hmm. They were elected by the legislature, the state legislature. And the Electoral College, that votes for our president, all it says is the state needs to send so many electors.
Yep. Constitution
doesn't specify how those electors are selected. The governor could pick them. It doesn't matter. They could run a lottery. It wouldn't have mattered as long as they sent the electors to the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. They didn't want mob rule. I asked people if they remember who Socrates was. A lot of young people don't even know who he is. Mm-hmm. They think it's like like a tennis shoe or something. Oh, is that new app they got in the Apple Store? Well, Socrates was very outspoken about a war that was being fought by a city-state. Right. It was in Greece. And when they lost, like earlier, they were looking for a scapegoat. And, they found Socrates and said, well, you were talking against us all the time. Now we're going to take it out on you. And Greece was a democracy. So everybody got together and by majority vote decided you die. You drink hemlock and kill yourself. Because we're democracy and the majority voted that way. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, a republic is the only form of government that protects minorities against the majority. You don't want a democracy. You really don't want it. Because somewhere on the line, you're going to be found to be a minority. Somewhere, in some niche, in something that you support, like, eat, buy, watch, behave. Maybe it's your religion.
Thomas,
and you're going to be found a minority. And if you want to be in a democracy, they can vote you to do anything they want to you. Mm-hmm. Because the majority rules. Think twice about saying democracy. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tim. My rant's over. I'm done.
Do you think that government is going to control? I mean, I know it's in the Bible and things and Revelations, but, the government is going to control what we do, when we do it. Is that what all this is coming to?
Well, it's headed that way. Anybody, you have to understand the liberal agenda wants that to happen. Mm-hmm. They want to socially engineer society through the authority of government.
Right.
This is part of the liberal agenda. And so, piece by piece, this is happening. So more and more of our liberties are being stripped away from us. You know, oh, I'm free to do this. I'm free. No, you're not.
You're not.
Are you now free to display a Confederate flag on the side of your car without fear of somebody shooting at you? Are you free to do that now?
No.
You know, is the poor store in Gettysburg free to, sell these the other things? No, they're trying to make it into a democracy where the majority rules.
Yep.
And the minority opinion, and the funny thing about it, Tim, is that some of these opinions aren't really minority opinions. Some of them are majority opinions, but there's enough of those people who are so afraid that they won't show their opinion that way. They'll lie to people. It was just like after the fiasco of, what's his name, Jimmy Carter as president. I remember, when his presidency got so bad where everything was going to crap, we had 20-some% inflation. It was insane. The place was going to pot, and he couldn't accomplish even the simplest of things. You could not find a single soul who would confess that they actually voted for the guy. I mean, I'm telling you, you couldn't find anyone who would admit they voted for him. Mm-hmm. And obviously a lot of people did.
Right.
So it's just kind of a fear, and it's crazy. It's one of the things why I like about Donald Trump. Win, lose, or draw, whatever you think about him, he says what the hell he thinks.
Exactly. Yeah,
and people say, well, aren't you embarrassed, or do you regret what you said about the Mexicans and all? Yeah. He says, hell no. He says, all those kinds of bad guys are coming across those borders. And he said, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows what I said is true. Mm-hmm. Because he's independently wealthy. He doesn't need these. He's not afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a network down in Mexico that they're not going to broadcast the pageant no more because of his statements.
Good. That should be one of those politically correct things also. Miss America is a sexist thing.
Right.
You shouldn't have that anyway. We should do away with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it just exploits women. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
So the same people should cheer for that and say, yay!
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, Thomas, it was great talking to you these last 30 minutes.
Yeah, I filled in a gap for you, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
That's cool, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I'm going to go get some grub to eat. Thanks again for having me on the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening out there. And cheap plug, if you want to hear my radio show, Shifting Paradigms, and some more lunacy and controversial topics, listen in. It's called Shifting Paradigms. It's on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. on the IPBN network. You go to intrepidparadigm.com, click on the listen and chat link. You'll be in the chat room. You'll be even able to tell me in typing how screwy I really am, or at least what your opinion of it is. It's not a democracy, but you're welcome to voice your opinion. And we can see you there.
All right.
I'm going to go get something to eat, brother.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. I'll definitely be tuning in next week, as always.
All right. I think we're going to be talking about reincarnation this coming week.
Awesome. Good topic. Yep. All right, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. You got it, dude. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
If this station's not your cup of tea...
Drink coffee! 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 Drink coffee! 100% news, 100% information, 100% guarantee. Thought you might say that.
You're listening to Z Talk Radio Network.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week, and I want to thank Thomas Fusco for helping me fill in the gap this last 30 minutes, last hour of the show. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and be sure to tune in next week. Up next, the War and Exchange, right here on the Z Talk Radio Network. Good night, everybody.
It's